Ole Miss has a pretty interesting schedule in 2025, especially in the non-conference. As you take a look at this full schedule, and here is that non-conference schedule. So they're going to play Georgia State, Tulane, Washington State, and the Citadel. So they do not have a Power 4 opponent on the schedule, but Tulane, one of the better Group of 5 teams, Washington State in the Pac-2, whatever you want to call them, they actually had a pretty good season last year. So interesting non-conference schedule. Georgia State has had some decent years at the Group of 5 level as well. And then, of course, the Citadel. So all games that Ole Miss, they'll be big favorites in all these games. But I think they'll give them just enough of a test to where these will be really good games for them. I think that teams should do this a little bit more. Maybe, yeah, you don't want to play a team or a bunch of teams that you might could lose to, but play some teams that, you're not going to beat 60-0. Play some teams you might beat by 3 or 4 touchdowns, something like that. So I did find that interesting with this schedule. We don't typically see. I don't know if we've ever really seen an SEC team, play 2 good programs that were not Power 4 programs. So very interesting schedule there. I'm sure Washington State was scheduled back when they were in the Pac-12. But yeah, here's the home and away. You look at who they play. Of course, in the SEC, it's going to be flipped from last year. They'll play Arkansas, LSU, South Carolina, and Florida at home this year, and they'll play Kentucky, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Mississippi State on the road. I was just thinking about that Oklahoma game. I don't remember that game. Like I can remember pretty much every game from last season, at least especially the SEC games. I don't really remember that game, so that's kind of weird. But they'll play on the road this time instead of at home. So let's get to that schedule. They'll start with Georgia State on August 30th. That'll be a home game. Then they play Kentucky. So interesting, they'll play Kentucky on the road September 6th. Early in the season again. Week 2, actually. So very early in the season. In fact, Ole Miss plays 2 SEC teams in their first 3 games, which is also very unique. This is just like a unique schedule for Ole Miss. Throw in the fact that they also have a bye week the week before their final game. Like, it's just kind of a weird schedule. But Kentucky on the road, then Arkansas at home on September 13th. Then it's Tulane on September 20th and LSU on September 27th. So you look at those first 5 games, the first month of the season before their first bye week, and you're talking about, a Georgia State team that's not a horrible Group of 5 team, and then 3 SEC games plus Tulane, who's a pretty good Group of 5 team. That is that's a tough start to the season. I'm not saying Ole Miss can't win all these games, and they'll probably be favored in all 5 of these games, but it's still like you don't usually have 5 games without any like real cupcakes, or at least more than one. I mean, maybe you call Georgia State a cupcake, that's fine, but 4 of their first 5 games will be probably somewhat competitive games. So that is very interesting with this schedule. And then they get into these next 5 games, actually 6 games before their other bye week. They'll have Washington State on October 11th. Then it's back-to-back road games at Georgia and at Oklahoma. Then home for South Carolina. Then it's the Citadel in a really weird spot. The first, on November 8th, actually, the second weekend of November. And then Florida at home on November 15th. So this is definitely a strange schedule, having a random FCS opponent. Usually the FCS opponents come in the first few weeks, or they come like in the next to the last week. We see that a lot in the SEC, but not just randomly, with 3 games to play after that. I do look at this stretch, though, from Georgia to South Carolina. That's a brutal stretch. 2 road games, one of them against Georgia, one of them against Oklahoma, and a South Carolina team that a lot of people are high on coming into the season. So that's definitely the stretch right there. That's the toughest stretch of the season, without a doubt. And again, you got Washington State after weird bye weeks. Not where you want to see these bye weeks. You get a bye week before playing Washington State. Then you get your other one before the Egg Bowl. I know that's a big rivalry game and all that, but these are definitely not the toughest opponents on this schedule. I'd rather see a bye week before Georgia, or maybe between Georgia and Oklahoma, so you don't have back-to-back weeks with road games. You'd rather have that bye week late in the year before Florida, I think, instead of Mississippi State. So this is just a very strange, a very unique schedule for Ole Miss as I look at it. Again, I preview all these schedules. We break down all these schedules, and I haven't really seen one that comes out like this. I just find it unique. I'd love to get your thoughts on this one. But if you see how they stack up in the SEC, so you look at their opponents from last year, the winning percentage from 2024 for their 2025 opponents, which will be the same opponents, For Ole Miss, it's 26-38, so a 41% winning percentage. That actually gives them one of the easiest schedules in conference play. But I think you look at teams that are going to be better. Like Florida's going to be better. Oklahoma's going to be better more than likely. Kentucky and Arkansas, maybe they're a little bit better. So I think the schedule is tougher than that number would indicate. Also, you have the fact that they played Mississippi State. They had no wins. So that's, if you just take Mississippi State out of this, and then that record's 26-30. So that's obviously much, much different. But still, it is, it's not the toughest schedule. I just look at the way the games are set up, like when they fall. It is a little bit tricky, and we'll see what happens for Ole Miss. But overall, I think it's a fairly tough schedule for them, despite the fact that the SEC, their SEC opponents maybe aren't at the top. Like you do have Georgia, but you don't have to play Texas. You don't have to play Alabama. You don't have to play some of those top teams. But still, I do think this Ole Miss schedule is going to be a little bit tricky for them in 2025.